All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. In the first 21 years of the NFC North, the Detroit Lions have never won the division. And you got to go back to 1993 in the old NFC Central to find the last time that the Lions were able to win a division title of any kind. But all of that could be changing here in 2023 as the Lions find themselves in an unfamiliar spot right now. Detroit is in the catbird seat to win the NFC North for the first time in franchise history. Now, through 5 games this season, Detroit is sporting a record of 4-1, while the Green Bay Packers, whom the Lions have already beaten this season, are 2-3 following Monday night's loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. And you got both the Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings currently sporting records of 1-4. And with the Bears and Vikings set to meet this Sunday at Soldier Field in Chicago, the loser of that contest is going to be 1-5. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough because this is a golden opportunity for the Lions, best opportunity in a long time, and they have a chance to put some distance between themselves and the rest of the division right now in order to win it. And if they can keep the W's coming along, which is going to be easier said than done, they could try to hang around with the Philadelphia Eagles and San Francisco 49ers for the top spot in the NFC. But like I said, that is going to be easier said than done. Now, when you think about where the Lions are right now, the first thing you have to say is the thought process changing in Detroit? And when you see this turnaround for this organization that has been down on its luck for so long, you just have to ask yourself, is there a culture change? And for a turnaround to begin, you have to have a culture change, regardless of the sport, because you got folks in that locker room when things are going bad, they're accustomed to losing. And when you're accustomed to losing, you find ways to lose games. And I mean, the Lions have had talent over the years. Don't get me wrong. The Lions have had their fair share of top five picks, but it just has not come together. And it looks like for the first time in a long time, this could happen. But like I said, Detroit needs to go out there and handle their business. You've got a Green Bay Packers team that's in transition post Aaron Rodgers, um, as it's now the Jordan Love show. The Chicago Bears are a mess. There's no way to pretty that up. And the Minnesota Vikings, who had that penchant for winning the close games last year, cannot find a way to win the close games right now, and they're 1-4. If you are the Lions, you've got to find a way to seize this moment. And here, in the earlier stages of October, by the end of the month, if you're Detroit, you could possibly put yourself in a real good position to win this division title. But like I said, easier said than done because Detroit's next 2 games are on the road. They've got a very interesting Tampa Bay team that they're going to travel to face this Sunday. And then after that, they're going to be on the road to take on the Baltimore Ravens before they host the Raiders on Monday Night Football just prior to their bye. And then once they come out of that bye, they're at the Chargers. And then you look at the tail end of the schedule. They're going to have 2 games with the Bears. You're going to be going to Soldier Field in December. You've got 2 games with the Vikings over your last 3. You've got a trip to the Dallas Cowboys in week number 17, and you still got to go to the Superdome and face New Orleans, and then you got the rematch with Green Bay on Thanksgiving Day, and that game could have huge ramifications in regards to who wins this division. To me, credit to Dan Campbell. The turnaround began for him when the Lions were at 1-7 last year. And a lot of people just looked at it and figured, okay, another lost season for the Lions. No big deal. You don't expect that. Detroit was able to rally and finish 9-8, and they missed out on a postseason spot due to the fact that they lost a head-to-head matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. But credit to the Lions, and this is why I think it's possibly changing for this organization because the old Lions would have had a strong finish last year, and you know what, just went right back into a shell and continue to do the bad things that they were doing when they were losing. These Lions found a way to go out there and take care of their business. They went on the road and knocked off the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in week number 1. And I know that the Chiefs had some injuries in that contest, but still that's an eye opener because you still got Patrick Mahomes on that other sideline. You still got Andy Reid on that other sideline. You still got to go to Arrowhead in that environment and take care of your business. And the Lions were able to do that. This team is a reflection of their head coach, Dan Campbell. Of course, a former tight end in the National Football League. He's a guy, he's a bruiser. He's not one of these modern day pass catching tight ends. No, Dan Campbell was a blocking tight end. He started with the Giants. He's part of their Super Bowl team in 2000, also played with the Dallas Cowboys. And Dan Campbell is one of those tight ends that you just say, you know what, he's an extra offensive tackle when he played. When you put Dan Campbell into the game, as a player, you weren't putting him in there to go out there and make catches. That wasn't what he was in there for. No. But this team is starting to be a reflection of him. A physical, nasty team that's not afraid to get down in the trenches and get nasty with opponents. And I think that's going to definitely benefit them as the season progresses. You're talking about Detroit this year, sixth in yards on offense in the NFL, sixth in defense in yards allowed. And for Jared Goff and company, things are really coming together. They're building their offensive line, they're building their run game, and they're getting after you defensively. And I think this Lions team could be a force to reckon with come down the stretch. Like I said, it's probably going to be tougher for them to hang with both the Eagles and the Niners for that top spot in the NFC. But with that said, again, they've never won the NFC North, and you've got to go back to the days of Barry Sanders when the Lions last had a home playoff game, and that was at the Silverdome. And the Silverdome, it really doesn't exist anymore for the most part. But you think about those good Lions teams that they had in those days with Barry Sanders, Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, Lomas Brown. I could just go right down the list. Of course, Chris Spielman, who was a linebacker's linebacker. The Lion fans in Detroit and the greater Michigan area, excuse me, they want to come out and support this team. And you figure the Lions fans are loyal fans because they will support this team through the lean years. And of course, they have had a lot of lean years over the years. And this fan base just wants to erupt with something. Detroit as a whole wants to erupt with something. The Pistons, you see the jersey behind me, they're not doing too good right now. And they've gotten down on their luck. The Detroit Tigers, they're rebuilding. We don't know what they're becoming. Okay. The Red Wings, they're in a rebuild. Motown needs a team to gravitate to. And I think this is the ultimate opportunity for the Lions to seize that moment. Now, the Lions have made the playoffs, as members of the NFC North, as wild cards. Okay. But they've never hosted a playoff game at Ford Field. And I guarantee you, if the Lions are able to win this division, obviously they're guaranteed at least one home playoff game come January. Can you imagine how electric that Ford Field will be? That right there, I mean, the standing room, I mean, those tickets, it would sell out like nothing. We talked about it, a couple of years ago when the Cincinnati Bengals had their turnaround. And I said, listen, if the Bengals got to that Super Bowl, that Southern Ohio and Kentucky, they were going to come out and represent them in that Super Bowl. And they did, albeit they lost to the Rams. But when you have a fan base that's seen their team be down on their luck for so long, and they now have an opportunity to cheer for something, they're going to go out there and support them. Jared Goff, I know that he came from the Rams and now he's with the Lions. Granted, totally different scenario. I mean, Jared Goff and that Matt Stafford trade was really to throw in. Nobody really paid attention to him. A former first overall pick, obviously, in the draft. But secondly, Jared Goff came to the Lions with no pressure because nothing really was expected of him. Nothing is really ever expected of the Lions. And I think he, just like this team, has flown under the radar. And I think this was the perfect scenario for him because being with the Rams in LA, especially after, getting to that Super Bowl, he was under the microscope out there. Now you go to the Midwest, you're in Detroit, you're in a blue collar town, and now you had an opportunity to have your revitalization, if you will. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity for him. He's making the most of it. I like the early pick of running back Jameer Gibbs. I think he's going to do some big things for this team. You also have David Montgomery at running back. Like I talked about this D, they know how to get after you. So I'm looking at this Lions team right now. It's all about growing up and it's all about seizing the moment. They're 4-1. People are talking about them, but you want people to keep talking about you as January comes around. And I think the Lions do have that potential. Now, will these Lions live up to it and seize the moment and get this opportunity that's in front of them, a golden opportunity to win the NFC North for the first time in franchise history? I think they do it. I really do. So I look at these Lions and I think they're going to go out there and take care of their business and win the NFC North for the first time in franchise history. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And on a closing note, I just want to take the time out to dedicate this podcast to somebody that I knew that passed away recently, a good friend of mine named CJ. And CJ helped me in my writing when I was younger. CJ helped me, to understand sports from a different perspective. And I always appreciated the advice, the great advice that he gave me. And as an older man, you just sit back as a younger guy and listen to that. He's no longer with us. My condolences to his family and all of his loved ones. But CJ, you're always going to be in my heart. And I thank you for the impact that you had on me. And thank you for the impact in making me better. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up. I'm William Martin signing off once again and saying thanks for tuning in to the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.